Hi, everybody, and welcome to Networking in the Time of COVID. If you have not had to network in the time of COVID, this panel may not be useful for you. However, I think that is probably most of us. But for many writers, introverts anyway, networking has not changed much at all in the time of COVID, except for a few common things like this.
Gotten better.
Yeah, like this, a writer's conference and other workshops, but in this case, we don't have to put on pants. Or as my wife said, she said, I get to see people, but nobody gets to see me, because she's also attending this conference. And networking is different for sure when you're online instead of sitting in a restaurant or BarCon or whatever that may be. So that's what we're going to talk about today. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the circle to our panelists, all of whom I love dearly, and allow them a minute or two to introduce themselves and tell us something about them and why they might be a good fit for this panel. Jared, go first.
Oh, wow. I got picked. Well, let's see.
You weren't picked last.
I know.
First time since dodgeball and PE. Go ahead.
That's what I was going to say, man. Dodgeball, that trained it in me. I'm involved in a lot of organizations around the state of Utah, everything from TEDx Salt Lake City, Utah Artist Teaching Roster, Utah Poets Society, as well as the League of Utah Writers, Story Makers. Of course, I'm teaching here at LTUE and tons of other little conferences just about everywhere I can get my hands in there just to help out because I'm a big fan of helping. So networking is like a core part of everything that I do, on top of adding new fun things like, adding a lot of Twitch streaming and like I talked about last night, really enjoying becoming a murderer or a serial killer online, where it's legal, and having fun with that. So that's why I deserve to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. You betcha. All right. Now, my new friend Russell, I want you to go next and tell us something about yourself while you're here and mention your app, because we'll talk about that when it comes to networking. So go for it.
So my name is Russell Nohelty. I'm a USA Today bestselling author. I write or edit all of these books and a bunch more. And I run a company called Wannabe Press, which just launched an app called Wannabe Plus, which has about 100 hours of my old interviews and workshops about how to build a writing career, as well as all of our shorts, behind the scenes, novels, comics, and a whole lot more. I also ran last year the Online Writers Conference, which is how Dave reached out to me. I think I'm a pretty okay networker. So I think that's why I'm here.
All right, Erica.
Okay. We were briefly chatting before, and sometimes as a creative, you don't know how you end up in situations. Much like Jared, I just help out where I can. And then when I help out, all of a sudden, there are different authors that I've, because of NDAs, I can't say names, but I've volunteered with, helped with signings, been an assistant, and all sorts of different things that have put me in situations to be very useful, just because I'm a jack of all trades. And basically, if you need something done, I am a great person to come talk to and help you make that happen. Let's see. My first book that's out is Eden's Outcast, and that's all about Lilith, the mother of monsters, running around middle of nowhere, Utah, dealing with the creatures that she's responsible for or not taking responsibility for. And then I am really big on, if you want to be a writer, I am a person to come talk to because I will help you. I will bug you until you write, 5 words, 10 words, eventually a novel. And it's just kind of one of those things I feel very passionate about. So whether you're a professional, because with Heads and Tails Publishing, we have these shared universes and we invite authors to come write in them. And sometimes we have some really big names that are writing in those universes and we help. So like traditionally in publishing, it takes about a year between books to come out. And in the consume everything society, a year is a long time. And they've moved on. Your readers have moved on and forgotten. If you don't have something coming out regularly, with webcomics mostly daily is the way to go because you lose everyone's attention. You can get away with weekly if your comic is really good. And so we are doing a similar thing with writing, is that once a month, a story set in a universe where you're the IP owner, but you control everything. You have the final say on what happens in your IP, gets released. And then that way, when the next big book comes out, hopefully your email list has grown. There are people who are still aware of you and still loving you, and they still have those books that you love. So on the professional side, that's where we help those who are bigger fish. And then if you're new and starting out, we work with you on what do contracts look like? What do deadlines look like? This can be a little hard because you find out very quickly who's serious and who's not. And then on that other side, me personally, I have people that I send messages. How many words have you written today? And then when they're ready, I'll read it and I'll do reader response, which is like, I liked this. I didn't like this, made me feel confused. And going through that traditional how to be a writer process. And so for me, it's just so much fun. And I network without meaning to.
Still networking. That's good. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Troy Lambert. I'm a freelance writer, author, and editor, and I now own a small niche press, which I started with by using a partnership with an agent in London that happened post-Brexit in the middle of COVID. And we published about 4 titles last year. We will have over 11 already on our list this year, and then some more coming after that. So it's obviously very exciting. My experience networking during COVID was that I started a brand new company with a partnership with somebody across the ocean in a completely different time zone, with people that I've never met, and cover designers that I've never met, and audiobook narrators that I've never met, and cover designers, and just all these people I've never met, because we do everything virtually. But we do a lot of things virtually as writers anyway. So those are the things we're going to talk about on this panel. We're going to talk about how do we do this? But first I'm going to ask, what's the biggest way that networking has changed for you during COVID? So what has been the change? I know there's a lot of things that are the same, but what's been the change?
Besides just saying it's better, right? And like that it's gone online, but like it's so much easier to do now because you can form a pod of people that like I do weekly chats with people I have a writers group that meets online on Mondays. I have a group of publishers and comic creators that meet just before this. That's where I was. And like, I don't have to leave my house and I don't have to ruin my writing time. I talked with my wife a couple of days ago because I was doing this week. And so I have to get my words done earlier in the week than I normally do. She's like, yeah, but when you used to go to a show, like that would be a dead week for you. I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, this is better. This is better because coming to this means I could still write my same 25,000 words that I do every week and still do. I did a workshop for this and another workshop on Thursday. I did a panel yesterday. I did a panel today. Like that would literally, like, I would just never be able to do that and still get networking done and do whatever after party things and other stuff to be done. So it's, in some ways, it's worse because you're not in person with people. But on the other hand, I think you're getting them at their best more often than that you're getting them than when you're at a conference and you've been tired all day because you're walking around, or you have to drive from your house up to Burbank to like do a networking event and like with your kids like at home or whatever your day was. You can just sit there at your computer, whether it's audio or video or even texting, and just like not have to worry that you have to drive home or you have to fly home after it.
Right.
Yeah, I love the way that you put that. I mean, time management for sure is easier to maintain while attending events, while talking with people. The thing that I miss so dearly is the unexpected meeting, right? That I used to get at conferences or even when traveling or going out to eat at a restaurant and sitting at the table next to another author who's so famous that I get a suntan sitting next to them from their how good they're, right? Like I get to hear their stories and then find that I get to hang out with them afterwards. there's the unexpected meeting that doesn't happen quite as spontaneously. But on the flip side, like you were saying, because time management plays into it, we're able to expand our networking more, right? We can spend a little bit more time instead of just spending 30 minutes talking with somebody because we have to run over here, or it's time for me to take the 2-hour drive home, depending on where I'm at. I can spend an extra 45 minutes, an hour, depending on what time I've given myself to network with people. So, it has gotten easier in some aspects, but there's just that one element that I so dearly miss and will look forward to when we're back together, of course.
Well, it's become more intentional, hasn't it? Like, you have to be like, if you want to meet somebody at a convention, you used to be like, I just have to go into like the lunchroom and I might meet like Larry Niven, or I might meet somebody. And now you have to be like focused on saying, I have to find the after party. I can't just show up at the local bar. Like, I have to meet with these people. I have to reach out because they're probably not going to do it. And I have to like form ways to collaborate with people or make something that brings them in instead of just relying on the intentionality, which is exhausting. But you do that in place of having to be exhausted at the conference. Like, I never feel like I'm my best at a conference. I've seen Erica half dozen times at conventions, and like, I am always exhausted every time I talk to her, whether it's 8 a.m., 8 p.m., like whether it's the first day of the convention, whether it's the 10th day of the convention, like whatever, it doesn't matter. I am already exhausted whenever I speak with her, and everyone, literally. And like, I feel like when I'm at a conference, I'm forcing myself to like drink a ton of caffeine and do things that I wouldn't do, which is great, but it also puts me off my best game, and it puts me off my healthy game also. Cause like, I feel like I've been healthier this past year than I've been in the last decade. Cause like, I'm not overjuicing myself with coffee. I'm not eating whatever crap is on the con floor. Like, I'm able to have that intentionality that I didn't have like before, but you do give up that instantaneous thing that you get.
I don't want to, I want Erica to be able to speak, and I apologize for jumping in here really quick. And this is amazing for us who already have a little bit of success, already tied into a lot of networks. The thing though is, for people who are trying to break into networking, who don't have access to the conferences the way that we do, or access to these other areas or people, that's where it becomes a different kind of challenge. Because like you were saying, you could attend a panel in real life, and when the author comes down, you could go talk to them, ask them a question really quick as they're passing through, and maybe connect, right? And for that person who's just starting out the networking, I think it's posing a different kind of challenge where it's a huge benefit for us. I mean, I get to attend board meetings and sit in my chair, right? I don't have to drive downtown or other places, which is great for me. But for the person who would love to be on that board, who doesn't have that introduction yet, can't go to that public meeting because they're not invited, it becomes a different kind of challenge, I think. Sorry, right. Erica, go for it.
Sure.
No, I was going to just bring up on the flip side is that with online networking, it is fantastic, and all points brought up are completely valid. But the thing is, just outside my door, I've got the two little ones, the critters that live in my house, and my significant other. Sorry, I sometimes call him my significant otter because we just love otters. And the thing is that there may be a panel or a chat or an unofficial Zoom meeting that I would love to go to, but if the flour is being thrown on the floor by the toddler, unfortunately, cleaning up the flour and stopping the toddler from doing so becomes the priority. And so it's kind of this weird, at least for me, it's a very, it's almost harder to sit down and network. Because when I go to a convention, they're not with me. And so therefore...
But can I ask you a follow-up to that?
Yeah, sure.
Can you go to more things? Like, I would assume that like when you are leaving for a week, you can do that less often because you are like have to do stuff, or like, are you doing?
We plan it. It's a lot of planning. I'm lucky. I have a support system. And also I don't go to week-long events. Most of my things are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The longer ones, like let's say Dragon Con in Atlanta, yeah, that one turns into a whole week. That one I don't go to as often just because there's a huge time commitment. But we can work out a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday event because, John, my John can take point on Saturday and Sunday, and then I just have to sort out Friday. And so one day is way easier than, 3 days. And so with pandemic life, with everyone is always at home, my third grader was distance learning this past year, and it's only in the past month that we felt comfortable with her going back to school. And so on top of everything else, teaching is a huge commitment and takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of work. And so any extra time, including for me, writing time, got eaten up by responsibilities that were super important. And I think it's not anyone's responsibility to reach out and make new friends, but I kind of try to keep that in mind as people are like, I really want to do this, but I'm dealing with all of this other stuff that's become a responsibility during this time. So for me, it's yes, I would love to do this, but I don't know if I can trust the 2-year-old to, just watch the one show so I can go to this meeting. It's,
right, exactly.
And I know
like
a lot
what you
of
said,
people.
Russell. Oh, no, sorry. I like what you said, Russell, about things being intentional, because I think what this also does to a certain extent is it makes people more accessible. People that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access because they are in a situation where they're one-on-one. But it's also, you have to be intentional, but there's also the fear of asking.
Well, there's also a negative to this. So this is something that I found last year because I ran 3 conferences. I did 100 podcasts or 80, whatever number. I did just an insane number of podcasts. I did weekly live stream. I did all of this stuff. And where previously I was at a show, so only those people could access you, only the people that were at that show could access you. Suddenly I was on everyone's feed all of the time. And it actually devalued what I was doing because suddenly I was Russell's just going to be available everywhere. So towards the end of the year, I actually had to be intentional to pull back and say, no, I'm not going to be on every podcast. I'm not going to do a bunch of conventions. I'm only going to do ones that I believe in, and that are spaced far enough apart that it doesn't feel like people will always be able to access me or that I'm always out there. I don't do the Twitches. I don't do the Facebook Lives. I don't do all of that stuff. Not because I don't want to, but God, I do not want to. But because I feel and again, I think this is more a problem once you have an audience and you're burning them out than at the beginning. But there is that idea of intentionality goes both ways. It's I intentionally have to reach out to people, but I also have to intentionally decide what things I'm doing and who I'm helping and what emails I'm responding to and who I'm giving more of myself to. Because as Erica said, you could give yourself, or at least hopefully I think alluded to that, you could give yourself 100% of the time to all online stuff, and there's just not time for that. So one of the best things about online networking is you can start small. You don't have yes, you do not have the intentionality of sitting next to Larry Niven at a signing, but what you do have is the ability to you and your 3 friends who are all excellent writers to meet once a week. And I'm going to tell you right now, those 3 writers who you meet with once a week are going to have way more impact on your career in 5 years than Larry Niven will. The people who you should be focused on networking with are people who are in your cohort, not the people who are ahead of you. Because if you become a successful author and you can help the other people become more successful, and they can help you become more successful, and you have a really good cohort, I am shocked. One of my buddies is the publisher at Scout Comics now. There are people, and we were just creators. We just we're making books, and my friend has a big YouTube channel, and all of these people are big in press, but they all started as this tiny group of creators who had made one book. And yes, a ton of people fell out of that, and a ton of people fell in, but those are the things that people, I think, don't focus on at the beginning of their career, because they're like, oh, well, what matters? Where, like, we're all nobodies now. But some of those people will go on to be best-selling authors. Some of them will grow up and not write and become your biggest fans. And some of them will become the cohort that you sort of grow up with. And networking in the time of COVID showed me that those are the people that really I did focus on, but I should focus on even more, because they're the people that I have a relationship with. And those are the people that are going to go to the mattresses for you. Larry Niven is not going to the mattress for you. Just will not do it. And not just, and I feel like we keep talking about Larry, but like any big name author, like I have some big name author friends who I think will go to the mattress for me, but it's taken years to develop that relationship. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you are starting from the nothing with these people and then meeting every week and growing with them every week, it doesn't have to be a writer's group either. It can just be like I have a writer's group that meets for 2 hours and it's just to kind of complain about things or like talk about stuff. And those people are the people that I would call to, like, if I needed a recommendation, or like when I need to know if a publisher is like worth pursuing, or if I should have someone on my show. Like, those are the people. I am not calling the tangential celebrities that I know because I don't have a deep relationship with them.
Right.
I think that's a valuable point, right? I think that what you bring up is excellent. You have to focus on your friend group and make them close and work with them intentionally. But as kind of a little bit of a counterpoint, there was my very first conference, I don't know, 7 years ago, when I first ran into Dan Wells, who's, up there, but not up there, right? He's a great author, does amazing stuff. But as it turns out, I ended up in 6 conferences that were back-to-back conferences, and I'm a nobody author at this point. I happened to be at all of them, and he joked with me because I was unintentionally around him. He, at the end of the 7th conference, he joked with me and asked if I was stalking him, which was hilarious. But then we became closer friends. The next thing I know, during that whole time, I'm building this relationship with him. Now I've been on panels with him. Now I'm on writing excuses. And, we've been able to work together. And it all started because of that meeting that I was able to be around him more often. I mean, you don't have to target like the biggest stars. You do need to have your close relationship with your friends. But it's being able to get the wisdom from people who are more experienced and not just conference wisdom. Because some people will share some things, and then when you get to hang out with them, I'm going to be honest, if you go to a BarCon and you get an author who's a New York best-selling author who gets a couple of drinks, sometimes they give you some secrets that they don't give up during a panel, just to kind of give you a little bit of a tip.
Yeah. And that is true. I think this is all about being intentional in a couple different ways. And you're absolutely right, Russell. And you have to be intentional and pull back too, because you can be everywhere. And the other thing is it can be exhausting. It's more exhausting to do things online than people think. It's almost as exhausting as an in-person con, with the exception of the travel and some of the running around. But there's still a lot of energy that you give up when you go and do those online things. So I think that's important to know too, but I also think it is good that we're making the distinction between somebody that's starting out and somebody that already has an audience. We have a writers group that we meet every other Wednesday, a critique group. And the good thing that came out of COVID was we have a member who moved to Vermont years ago and obviously couldn't come to our in-person groups. That was a little bit challenging. She came back into the critique group because of COVID. She said, well, you're doing things Zoom anyway, so do you mind if I come back in? Well, not at all. I'll come back in. She's one of my favorite people that's in that group. She gives me some of the best feedback, one of my favorite authors in that group when she submits stuff. So there's some pluses, there's some minuses, there's some, that type of thing. So I think we already talked about the kind of the pros and cons of online marketing. But let's define some of the cons a little more. Let's target those a little more. What are some of the bigger cons of online networking versus in person?
Can I add one more thing real quick?
You may add 1 or 2 more things really quick.
I had a dozen things. Me and Jared talked for a long time.
Yeah. And you don't even have to do it quickly. You can do it slowly, enunciate. It's fine.
Oh, okay. I'll go back to my theater days. But all of that being said, we've mentioned folks who are further along in their career, New York Times bestsellers, maybe they've reached goals that, you could only dream of maybe one day being at that point. Please remember that they are human. And that's actually super important. There was one job I worked where just the complete lack of awareness of people coming up to an author and understanding that this is a person. And so, well, as a someone starting out or trying to make those network connections, going up and being like, we're going to be best friends and da 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 da, and I know everything about you. If someone were to do that, to you, or if someone were to do that to me, that would scare me. I'd be like, nice to meet you. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Just because if you're all of a sudden telling me, and I know all about your cats and I know all about your dogs from the pictures you post on Instagram, and I've figured out where you live because of the images in the background, that's going to scare someone. Like, remember that networking is about connections. And what's more valuable than anything else is those genuine connections. Genuine connections are going to do not only you a whole lot of good, but the other individual in the situation a lot of good. And that's kind of just the one thing, because I've been around people who are like, I'm gonna be best friends with so and so, just you watch, and I'm like, oh no, please stop. Just take a breath. Like, they're not a goal, they're not an objective. They are human.
Well, yeah, let it organically happen. And I think that's one of the cons of online versus in person. It's kind of like we were talking about those meetings, like you with Dan Wells. Like, I talked to Jim Butcher a lot, and Jim Butcher and I are not great friends, but I talked to him a bit at a conference, and we were able to have a pretty long conversation because we were both at similar places in our lives at a similar time. And then, and we both, there was kind of some writing issues and things like that. And we both came out of that for similar reasons. And so it was a great organic conversation, but it didn't turn into a thing where Jim Butcher and I go hang out, and things like that. But it was a very wonderful moment for both of us to just find someone else we could identify with. And I think that's part of it, is not forcing a connection. But that's when you're online, it's a little more difficult to just strike up a random conversation with someone. I mean, now the Discord chat, actually, I'm seeing is kind of a pro to this conference, because there's people talking to each other in the chat while we're talking, that are talking about different things and kind of bouncing some ideas off each other that we don't even necessarily see at the time, but that add another layer of depth and connection and networking to the conference that's similar to what you would get in person, but at the same time very different. We talked a lot about pros and cons, but do you think that online conferences or more of a hybrid approach will continue for conferences, writer meetups, other things, or do you think things will return to normal and we'll go back to more in-person stuff?
That's a great question. I am a part of lots of conferences, and I'm not in any position to make any formal announces for those conferences. But I can tell you that the strongest consideration is being given to hybrid, partially because, just like in the chat, some people are from Seattle who don't have the budget to travel, right? Some people are from Australia who would love to attend a conference here and don't have the resources to do so. At the same time, there are people who do have the resources and would love to get that weekend break off from the kids to go meet some people, hang out, right? And get to do those things. So I think, and I actually hope, hybrid is the way that moves forward for conferences.
My initial thought is that hybrid is probably going to be what we're looking at. One author I work with, they're like, I don't lose the writing time on the plane. I don't lose the writing time when I'm in the car with the person who's acting as the guide. Signings don't take hours and hours and hours. So for them, they're able to maintain their health, maintain their writing schedule. And so from the perspective of authors or big name talent, hybrids are going to be the way that they're going to want to go, just because of they're not dealing with all of that time suck, or like what Russell was mentioning, that burnout and the bad eating and the drain. Because when you're in a room filled with people, there is a vibe that comes off the crowd. And so for me, that's kind of mixed, because when I'm in a room with someone, sarcasm is the easiest example, right? So if someone's being sarcastic, haha, funny, giving you a hard time because you're a friend, when you're in the same room as them, it's easier to read. But if you're online and you're like, haha, giving you a hard time, there's just something that's missing. And you can't tell, is that person being super mean? Is that person joking with me? And then you can get kind of thrown out of the vibe or the energy. And so for me, personally, I would love to see, traditional conferences come back with a vengeance. But I'm also just seeing that if managed correctly, and if, the right marketing and advertising is done, hybrid conferences are here to stay. My one concern is just the market being saturated because of the online experience. Or, all you do is you turn on the camera, you jump online, and you hit on Facebook Live, you hit a button and you go live. And so, or you go into a Zoom meeting, and I know of authors doing, well, as we've all mentioned, like writing workshops and all of this different kind of thing. And so it's kind of like the conventions, I feel, are going to have to find ways to really make themselves stand apart, because otherwise, why will someone pay to attend an online convention when they can get that interaction or that need filled for free? I lucked out. Dragon Con did free mentor sessions. I got to sit and chat with Russell for a bit. I got to talk with one of my all-time favorite editors from a publishing company. Because Dragon Con was like, okay, we know this year is weird and we're going to do this. That was an amazing thing that became available. So as a convention, or a workshop or whatever you may be, how are you going to make yourself stand out? And what's the added value for your attendees or the people who are coming as guests? I know folks who won't do online conventions because they just don't see a return from them. They're like, normally we go to these shows, we make X amount of dollars, but we already have an online platform. We already have, the big group of people. So it doesn't serve them. And that's the thing that I think with the hybrid, we really have to look out for, is how are we serving our community?
Yeah, I just like running a conference is hard. And like, I think we saw a glut last year. I don't think that glut's going to continue. I just don't think, because I think a lot of people did the one, and they were like, I don't like to run it. I don't like being a panelist on it. Like, I don't like attending it. I don't like that the people that are doing it are complain to me. There's a whole lot that goes into a conference. And like, I ran 3 conferences that I think were really well run. And like, I came out of that being like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do another one. So I think that just with show, like, I mean, me and Erica run like all big shows, small shows, middle shows, like we've done the gamut of shows. And like, how many of those shows like come back for a 3rd year? Like, a lot of people like doing a show, but very few of them have, LTUE knows how to run a show. A Greater Los Angeles Writer Conference, or like whatever other writers conference, or San Diego Comic-Con, they know how to run a show. So like, they could theoretically put on a very good virtual hybrid conference. But I think you're going to see more people just saying, I don't want to do these. And I've seen it already. Like, we've all had Zoom burnout. Like, we've all had like, I don't want to do another conference. Like, I don't want to do this other thing. And I think we're seeing people that are pickier now and saying, I'll do Life, the Universe, and Everything, or like, I'll do X, Y, and Z show, because they're starting to realize that like, the thing that matters is the organizer. Like, the organizer is the thing that's important, even more important than the guests. Like, I learned that like, the way you flow the show and the way that the show works and the way you hire moderators and all of these things are more important than even the guests that you bring, because you could bring guests and they're great guests, but like, if you don't have good moderators, if you don't have good direction, if you don't know where to go, like, it's just going to be chaos in the panels. And so I think you are going to have people that are still starting shows, but I think more and more, just like with podcasts, there's a million podcasts out there, but like, how many of them have have a good audience? Like, how many of them have enough audience to like support themselves? It's very few, because people more and more say, I don't just want a podcast on writing. Like, I want to like, this human being is good at teaching me. And that is what I'm following, instead of I'm following just every writers conference that's out there. I think also, like, with you, like, competing with YouTube and all of these things, like the beauty of a conference like this, of a good hybrid conference, and like, they've been hybrid conferences forever. It's just not been in writers conferences. Like, when people say our hybrid conference is here to stay, like, I did a podcast conference a couple of years ago, and like, they were like, and do you want the digital add-on where you get all the digital stuff too? Like, they've been doing it. Other conferences just have done, like, this is just a way that they have done business forever. So I think that for someone like me who teaches things like Kickstarter for authors, which is a not very popular topic, certainly not popular enough to warrant flying me out to Utah for a show. It is a way for someone to say, well, do you want to do this online thing? I mean, maybe not. Please fly me out to Utah next year when there's a thing. Like, it's going to be very, very popular topic, but it gives you a way to say, you know, if there's a really niche topic of like that a few authors really like, to say, well, what if we did a panel on 18th century memoirs, or like library services, or like something that's like, I'm not going to, like, I want to bring in these really big names, but like, there's just not enough interest to fly them out here, but I could do a really good panel and make it really valuable for those people. And for a conference organizer, I could see it being a huge boon. Hey, we're going to have these people, and then we're going to have one day at the beginning or at the end. Because one thing that people don't think about with conventions is usually, you don't see everything you want. But the people that are exhibiting at the convention, or are paneling at the convention, or are big celebrities at the convention, like, they don't get a chance to do panels. Like, they don't get a chance to watch panels. I've told conventions forever, like, why are you not doing like a development day for your exhibitors, so like they can at least get some experience for being on? And I'm talking not about like a con like this. I mean, more like, you know, Salt Lake City Comic-Con or San Diego. It's like, why are you not, like, I get value from the interaction on the floor, but like, I get no value. Like, if you just literally took everything else at San Diego Comic-Con away except the exhibit floor and the people that were, I would have no different experience, because I don't leave that floor. I don't get to see the panels. I don't get to see all of that stuff. So the ability to either have that recorded and available online later, or to be able to have a day before the show or after the show where like I'm just online at my couch while I'm decompressing as a zombie, and like able to get a sense of like the best panels. Or, you know, you're already bringing in guests. Like, you're already bringing in guests for a show. Like, you should just do a day where you have a panel, where you have panels with them for exhibitors, because you're already going to bring them in a day early. And all of those things are reasons why I don't see why cons didn't do digital or hybrid before, and why I can't imagine them not doing them in the future, because there's such a way to value add, even if you're baking that into the price of the ticket.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to, one quick thing, and then I'm going to cut you off so we can do questions if there are any, because I don't know if we may have some questions. So we're running out of time. Real quick.
One real quick thing about like for a development day, the main thing that showrunners come up against, time and money. It really, that is why like an actual in-person development day for Comic-Cons, very unlikely. However, you're right, the hybrid thing and having those panels recorded and accessible to the folks who are a draw and interest on, like, for example, the exhibit floor would be an excellent idea. But once again, you're coming up against time and money.
Right. And I think a hybrid approach is largely going to depend on how it's monetized, honestly. And that's a part of it is, but I completely agree with Russell, is that I think that people are the amateurs that have put on these shows really quick, that they found out how much work it is even to do online, and they've given up. Anyway, producer, do we have any questions from the audience really quickly before we run out of time entirely?
We have one question from Cadence today. She asks, has being online helped or hindered building your email lists?
Email list? It has helped it tremendously. I don't know about anybody else, but being online is the place to build your email list. And I've gained My email list has probably grown by about 75% over the last year. So online is the way to do it.
I've always grown my list online. I cut a lot of people, so I've had up to 75,000 people, 125,000 people on my email list at one point. I think I looked at my total number of emails collected, and it's something like 150,000. I have about 10,000 on my list because I call it a lot. But yeah, I have always done it online. I'm assuming you're talking about like specifically networking and such online, or like being at these conferences online. And I don't know, because people come to I don't ask them the question like, did you find me at Life, the Universe, and Everything? Like when I'm at a convention, I just have a board or a tablet that's like, give me your email list. Like here's your email that you get. I like shows when they say, you had these people on your panel, or like you have these people that are thing, like they've all opted into your email list, and then afterwards you get like a list of people who like have opted in to like get an offer from you. Like I love it when a convention does that. They don't often do it, but I love it when I get that list at the end. That's like, oh, these are people that like are interested in the thing that you're doing. Or but yeah, I mean, I would say that between like Kickstarter launches and such, like 99% of my list is from online, and 5%, 2%, 1% is from like in-person events over time. It's just a lot harder to, and also those people that are in-person events are less likely to buy online. They're more likely to buy in person, which is great, but like people tend to interact with you the way they want to buy. So like the people that buy on Amazon are probably going to buy on Amazon. The people that buy on Kickstarter are going to buy on Kickstarter, and yada 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 yada. So if you want to build an online audience, so you maybe don't have to do 20 shows a year or 40 shows a year like I have, then like it behooves you to build your list online in that manner, and to have ways for someone to send you to give you a reason to go somewhere else and be on your email list. Like go to russellnohelty.com and get like a free comic, or go to wherever and get like a free thing. So you're not going to get anything by just saying I'm Russell. You're going to get something by delivering value, being an interesting person, being someone that someone wants to meet, and then being like, and by the way, if you go to download the Wannabe Plus app, you then will get like a free month and be able to read all my stuff, like whatever the thing is. So there has to be again, intentionality between you being online and you sending someone to your email list to sign up.
Yeah. An example of that is like this weekend, Dave Butler, Michael Brent Collings, and I, and a couple other people are giving away books. You can get a signed copy of my book, Harvested, for free. And there's a link that we've been dropping in the chat. You follow that link, you enter to win the things, and obviously that's an email list builder. You end up on our email list, and we do that online, even though we're sending you physical books. So there's usually always an incentive to get people to join your email list. If you join my email list, you'll not only get a chance to enter that, but you get automatic freebies for joining my email list, because that's the way people want to trade. You're asking them for more for their information, and so they want to trade something for that. So online is the easiest way to do that, because I can give you digital copies of stuff all day and it doesn't cost me a dime. So just my time. Jared, any thoughts on that? Other thoughts on that?
Email. I know that there's a couple other questions that have popped up, and I'd love to get that out.
Oh yeah, we should probably answer this. Okay. Producer, if you have another one for us, go ahead.
Alrighty, I have one more question for you from Kate Chase. It asks what tips for young people trying to network, especially young college kids, and what to look for and what to avoid.
Ooh.
Yeah, right off the bat, if you have to pay to network, I'm always suspicious. It's like when you have to pay somebody to publish your work. Let me give you $200 to publish my book. That's not a good situation. No, actually, I think right now, as we're moving through this transition where we're going to be more in person with COVID going on, for college age kids, being somebody who like Russell organizes conferences, have a lot of events, we depend heavily on volunteers to start networking. There's a lot of openings for you to either digitally insert yourself or volunteer physically in person, now's a great time to kind of get in so you can understand what the environment looks like to network, as well as start to network with people.
Yeah. And to add on to that, especially from back in the college days, there's another panelist here at LTUE. Her name's Maudie Murdoch. I have known Maudie since I was in university. And we bonded over the fact that we loved reading, we loved writing, we enjoyed all things geek. We played on D&D campaigns together. So finding those other like-minded souls to like become friends with, and do that thing that Russell was saying about building each other up, that's a thing that is a good idea to consider. To use the writing excuses example that Jared brought up, Howard Taylor, Brandon Sanderson, Dan Wells were all at university together. And so once again, and I think they were involved with Leading Edge, which is their science fiction fantasy journal, if I'm not mistaken. And so they found these like-minded individuals, and they supported and built each other up in the writing thing that they were looking to do. And a lot of times people will be like, there's no way that, all of these amazing people come together in real life and this happens. And I'm just going to point out it does. The Inklings, so that's like C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and a couple of other guys. You will attract other people that are going to be doing what you want to do, as long as you're actively working towards being the best that you can be.
Lovecraft did it. Had a group like that.
Yep.
Hemingway had a group like that. Van Gogh and Picasso all had a group like that. I will say that if you wanna if you're young, the easiest thing to do is insert yourself into a group that already exists. Like when I moved to LA, I became a volunteer at the Scriptwriters Network and moved my way up to like membership coordinator. My friend Shane is still we knew each other from those days. To look for groups that are doing sort of like open happy hours and things. Like I joined this thing called Comic Book Sunday when I first started doing comics, and like I made tons of friends from there. And then also organize your own stuff. Like even on a school level, like so many schools that I talk to have like their own convention, their own comic convention, and like it's organized by students, and that is how you can be close to power. If you're sitting as a volunteer in a special guest section with, I don't know, like Dave Butler or somebody else, Brandon Sanderson or whoever is there, like you're suddenly like you're going to be expected to like speak with them beforehand, afterwards, to like be around them. You can like ask them questions. Usually I try, at least when I'm on panels, to like ask the volunteers if they like have anything that they want or need, because like they're giving their time for free. So, all of those things where you can insert yourself into something like the Universe and Everything or any of these organizations, like they really do run on volunteers, and like they have access to writers of the future. They have access to like every big name writer that like out there, and at least a lot of them. And so those are the ways that you can both, especially if you're putting out product, if you're organizing things that you guys can create together, whether that's marketing things like book bundles or anthologies or whatever, any of that stuff that you're doing to organize people together, even if it horribly fails the first time, it will be better the second time and third time and fourth time. And eventually you're going to have a group of reliable people. You have to go through a ton of people to find a group of talented, reliable people, but you'll eventually find a group of talented, reliable people who will become your people. And from that, then you have 10 people all doing 1/10 of the marketing to get the same result, or doing 10 times the marketing to get the same result, because you're all splintering out and sort of finding your own groups outside of that.
Yes, for sure. Okay, we are almost out of time, so I'm going to give everybody one final thing. I would just say exactly the same thing. College is an opportunity for you. Volunteer, be involved, start your own stuff. Do all those things, because honestly, you have a fantastic opportunity during college. And I wasted my first couple of college years. Basically, I majored in beer and women, and then found out that was a really full major, and there really wasn't much of a future in that. And so I had to switch. switch my major to different things. But so don't waste your college years. You have tons of opportunity to volunteer, to learn, to be next to people that are really successful that you may not meet somewhere outside of college.
Well, contact someone and ask them if they'll speak at your school. Like, that's a great way to.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Ask your professor to contact somebody you really love and say, hey, can we have this person speak in our literature class? I bet you every time I get invited to speak to a literature class, I go. Every single time. It's so hard to say no. How do you say no? Young college students who want to learn. No, too bad. So anyway, final thoughts from everybody. Where are you next if you're somewhere next? And where can people find you? Jared, go.
So you can find me. I love that got selected. You can find me at jaredquan.com. I'm making a big push on my Twitch channel, Resitor164. I'm done with panels today, but I'll be around. I want to make sure I hang out. I'd love to talk with people for sure.
And I am at russellnohelty.com. We have an app called Wannabe Plus. It has 100 hours of information about how to build your author career. It's on iOS, Android. Plus, you can go to wannabepress.com and get a month for free and check out all of our books and teachings. I, like Jared, have nothing else to do today. No more panels to do today, but I'm going to try and be around somewhere so that we can talk.
And I'm Erica Cudamarler. You can find me at www.cudamarler.com. Also, my author Facebook page is a good place to get in contact with me, and that's just same thing, Kuta Marler, author. And my one last thought, I'm going to paraphrase Mark Twain. Don't let your education get in the way of gaining knowledge, because the major I started in when I went to university was not the major I finished in. Also, the different things that I got involved with while I was at school had nothing to do with the major that I graduated with. So find those things that you really love and adore, and don't let the bits and pieces get in the way.
Excellent. Okay, well, we will all be sure to pop into the chat afterwards and drop our links there so you can find us. We will be around the convention. My next thing I'm doing is at 4. I have a presentation on paid advertisements, book booster or budget buster. And then immediately afterward, I have another panel. I know that paid advertisements class is a lot of information, so I may do a Zoom later if you guys want to discuss book marketing and ask some questions beyond that, because I'm sure that presentation is going to take up the entire hour. So we may not have time for Q&A. Other than that, I can be found at TroyLambertWrites.com. If you Google Troy Lambert, you will likely find me, and you will also find a basketball player named Troy Lambert that sometimes shows up on the first page, sometimes the second page. I doubt that you will mistake him for me. Anyway, and thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, y'all.